welcome. It's Sunday afternoon around 4:30 Central if you're watching us live. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. There are some people who thought there wouldn't be a show today, but we are unstoppable, uncancelable. We are just a force of nature. And by the way, over the last week, folks in the Austin area and in Texas in general went through the worst and most freakish winter storm in history, as far as we can tell. Freezing temperatures for a week, pipes bursting, power outages, just way too much. And what I want to say is that behind the scenes, I couldn't have been more proud and more happy, even though I was miserable. I never lost power at my house, and I kept wanting anybody who didn't have power to come over, but there was 2 inches of ice in front of my place and nobody could get out. And Dan will have a story about that in just a moment. But the people in the atheist community of Austin got together and were making sure, hey, are you okay? Do you have power? Do you have water? You know, can we do this? Who's got a vehicle that can get to somebody? Can we get somebody where there's power? And while some people were like, you know, Mark Vanderbrink, I think, was out of power for like 55 hours, but he was fortunate enough to have a fireplace. And so I remember him saying he was playing Stratego with his brother, next to the fire. Austin is, I don't know, it's like closing in on 65, 70 degrees, something, who knows? It's warm. Almost all the snow is gone. And yet there's a lot to recover. Austin as a city is still on boil water notice because pipes froze, there's cross-contamination, and the water that's coming out of your pipes, if you have it, may not be safe to drink. So please, if you're in the Austin area, continue to do that and check on that. If you are elsewhere, make sure you check what your city's doing and whether or not you need to be boiling your water or taking care if you're, in the broader Texas. And as a reminder, we have crossed the line where 500,000 Americans have now died of COVID. Let's not forget that in addition to having this freak winter storm, we are still in the middle of a global pandemic. And while the infection rate and death rate are dropping, they're still really high. And so keep wearing a mask, keep following the guidelines, look into vaccinations in your area. This week, joining me from Truth Wanted, Objectively Dan. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. Yeah, I had was not so fortunate as you in terms of my power situation. My apartment was out of power for at least 4 days. And the first day was that Monday this past week, and didn't have power the whole day. Realized, I got to stay here tonight. I'm an Eagle Scout. I can handle it. It was fine. I stayed the night. It was like 9 degrees, but it was just gonna be for one night. That was fine. Then the next day, still didn't have any power, and that was pretty bad. Now you are actually, in terms of the ACA, are like the closest person to me. We're kind of close, relatively speaking, in Austin terms. We're neighbors. We're like 15 minutes away.
Yeah.
And I tried to get to your place 2 different times, but I could not get my car up the hill. I'm at like an intersection of like 3 different hills converging on each other, and I could not get my little sedan up there. And I finally escaped. I got up to I-35, and I stayed a week at Genetically Modified Skeptic's house, actually, because I-35 was a bit better to get there than to get to where you were at. But yeah, it was pretty brutal. I did not get back to my place until Friday, just in time for Truth Wanted. But yeah, it was really, really brutal out here. I saw families, parents with their kids out on the front porch with grills and propane stoves because it was warmer to be outside with the propane stove than it was to be inside the buildings here. Because, in Texas, we're not really used to that level of sort of winter stormage. Yeah. I saw lots of cars hitting each other and stuff. Lots of slipping and sliding. But it was pretty bad. And there's still ongoing effects of that. I had like a stuffed up nose like the whole week that I'm just now recovered from, I think. But yeah, it's pretty bad. So thank you guys for being so kind and sending your warm wishes to us. But the ACA, we pulled through. We're doing all right now. So
there were people living in their cars and all kinds of stuff. I have friends in Fort Worth who I need to call in and check on. Although, Karen, if you're listening, you can just text me, let me know if you got power, because as of last night when I called them, they had been out without power since Monday, and they relied on some friends Also, there's I think the Texas Attorney General needs to get busy investigating, because there are some people who received like $4, $5, $6, $9, and $12,000 electric bills for the 5 days where they whatever deregulated electrical organization they're paying for their electricity decided to increase the rates because demand went up, and they increased it to a redonkulous level. So for 5 days to have a $6,000 to $12,000 electric bill, that's criminal. And that business, if they ever, if they're trying to actually collect, it may be that it's legal. Like, oh, well, you signed up for this and you signed up for variable rates, and this is just that once in a lifetime thing. But a once in a lifetime thing shouldn't render anybody dead. And there's people whose life savings has, $16,000 more than my life savings. I don't know about anybody else, but I couldn't pay an electric bill that came in at that much. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to be happening. Let me get through the regular announcement-y things here, and that is, hey, everybody, if you're watching us live on YouTube, directly up above the chat, which I know you're all interested in the chat, and by the way, if you're not that interested in chat, just go ahead and be a dick to one of the moderators. We'll fix that problem for you. I saw somebody say that or something similar a minute ago. But up above that is a donate link. 100% of your donations go directly to the atheist community of Austin. They don't pass go. Google and YouTube don't collect any money at all out of that. In addition, you can become a member on YouTube, and that membership will give you special icons and emojis and whatever else. That's good. You can also go to patreon.com/The Atheist Experience and support us there. And for the people who just are interested in communicating with like-minded individuals, in addition to the Discord, we also have the Atheist Experience Facebook group, the Atheist Experience fan group, and the Atheist Experience private fan group. Those are up there at facebook.com/AXPPFG for the private one. In addition to this program, the ACA also produces, Dan's show, Truth Wanted, every Friday. I don't know why, at this point, anybody.
I've heard it's pretty good. I don't know. I've never seen it myself, though. I
had fun because I called in after you guys had somebody on talking about chemtrails.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you did.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I just can't. So Dan does things that I just can't. And so it's good to have him over here.
Yeah. Yeah. We get to some interesting stuff. This last Friday, we actually talked to two former Scientologists, both with very different perspectives on their time with Scientology. And the week before, like you said, we were talking about chemtrails. We were talking about all kinds of stuff. We get to some weird places on the show, but I love it. It's great. And if you like skepticism, if you like that stuff, but you want to talk more than just atheism, Truth Wanted's the place to be. So
Truth Wanted is definitely the place to be. You can watch it live on Fridays and call in, but you can also watch it after the fact as well. Yep. And in addition to Truth Wanted and Psychosexuality and the Atheist Experience and Talk Heathen, nonprofits are back in their airing on Sundays at 3 p.m. in the gap between Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience. With new hosts, new segments, new guests. I loved watching everybody try to come together to figure out, okay, if all of the people in Austin just don't have power, don't have internet, don't have water, what are we going to do? How are we going to do shows? And like clockwork, the crew behind this show, behind all of our shows, are just absolutely the finest people I've ever met, except Puck. No, he can't hear me. He's actually screaming. Sorry. I was having fun with that.
I couldn't tell if the pizza box was in front of there on purpose or not, but
at least he's not chugging 2 liters right now. I see Greg and I share the same barber and managed to get there. So yeah, that's the crew behind the scenes that makes sure everything happens. And I want to point out that while a good chunk of them are not in the Austin area, that was essential, like for this week's Secular Sexuality. I don't think there was anybody on or behind the scenes who was actually in Austin.
Yeah. Here's a fun fact about this week. I was getting ready to do the show from Drew's house, Genetically Modified Skeptic's house, because he's got his studio in there. And while I was getting stuff ready, I accidentally broke his microphone. I snapped the cable it was already kind of messed up, It's a Blue Yeti like the one that I'm having right here. It's actually a pretty similar setup, but the cords on these aren't super great, and I messed up the internal connection on there, and I just gave them money for a new microphone. So that's fun.
Oh, man.
It's good to have friends that you can break their shit and they still like you. So
well, I know there's an extra Blue Yeti rolling around because I loaned mine to Jenna, and then Jenna bought one. And there's other gear as well. So hopefully Drew gets a mic upgrade out of the deal. I mean, that's what should happen. You break a mic, you get a better mic.
That's the thing, because we were looking at mics, and it's like you get the Blue Yeti, you got the USB, you know, you pay like 120, 150 bucks wherever you're getting it from. But then like the next level up, it's all these like $1,000 microphones and stuff. There's not a good middle range. So if you guys, if you make microphones out there and you want to, you know, help us out at the ACA, tell us what to do. I don't know.
This is my favorite. I have a number of microphones. I've had a number of microphones over the year. This is the Bluebird by Blue, and I like it. But what you want to do a show, Dan? You want to talk to some people?
Sure. Yeah, I guess that's why I'm here, right? So let's go for it.
So Travis in Pennsylvania thinks he had a paranormal experience, and it's time to welcome Travis to the show. Travis, welcome to the Atheist Experience. You're on with Dan and Matt.
Hey guys, how's it going? Dan and Matt. Long time listener, first time caller. I've been listening for a couple years, maybe since a year or so before Tracy left the show. But anyway, yeah, I've been an atheist my entire life. I grew up in church. My grandmother was a preacher. She had her own church, her own congregation. I could never get away from it. But it never really like took hold to me, even as a 6 or 7 year old child. Like talking snakes and all that stuff never made any sense. So basically been this way my entire life, not believing in a God. But a couple of months ago, I just had like this weird experience. I'm home alone. I wake up in the morning. I wear glasses, and, you know, I get up early in the morning. So there wasn't anything different about my day. I got up, put my glasses on, and I saw something fly around my room. It kind of flew from one side of my bed, flew up towards the ceiling. It kind of like swooped down in front of my face and then swooped back on the other side of the bed. I ran out the room, closed the door, immediately called animal control. And it was maybe 5 o'clock in the morning. Couldn't get anybody on animal control. Called 2 or 3 different services. Couldn't reach anybody. Wind up just calling my job and telling my manager, hey, I'm going to be in a little bit late this morning. There's something in my room. I don't know if it's a bird or a bat. So my manager gave me the suggestion of, hey, just maybe if you crack your window in your room and keep the door closed, whatever it is, will fly out. So I go in the room, looking around, really didn't see anything in there at that time, but I still took a suggestion, cracked the window open, closed the door behind me, went to work, came back later after work. And then I decided, you know, let's see what this was. So I'm in the room again looking for evidence of something, you know, fur, dirt, dust, feathers, anything. Didn't see any evidence of an animal at all in the room. So for a day or so, I'm sitting here really contemplating, like evaluating myself, my mental situation. You know, it was early in the morning. I do wear glasses. I get that. But I really saw something. Something was there. Something was there. It was enough for me to make phone calls to other people. And so evaluated that for a day or so and really thinking to myself, you know, wound up talking to one friend and told him the situation, and I confessed to him. I said, dude, I think I had a hallucination. I think I saw something that wasn't there, and it really spooked the shit out of me. Sorry for my length. I'm so sorry. But it spooked me. I don't know what it was. And we talked about it for a minute, and basically I just let it go because I didn't see it again, and I let it go. And about 2 weeks later, my girlfriend was at the house. We were having a conversation, and she said something, and I said, what? And she was like, oh, yeah, like you saw a ghost. And I was like, why did you say that? And she's like, oh, well, I saw something in here. And I'm like, well, what did you see? And she described to me what I saw. And I never told her what I saw. I told 3 people that there was an animal in my house. Once I decided to myself that maybe it wasn't an animal and maybe it was a hallucination, I was nervous to tell anybody else that other than a good friend. So I never told my girlfriend, hey, I think I was hallucinating. And she described to me exactly what I saw. without me telling her what I saw. And that, I don't know, it just makes me feel like I can see how some people honestly feel justified in saying that, you know, they had a paranormal, supernatural, or some type of event experience. Why? And because it feels so real. It feels.
Well, if it feels real, that's not supernatural.
So
what is it about it that you think justifies paranormal or supernatural?
I'm sorry.
What is it about it that you think is
I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to figure out what is it. I get it. Something happened and you don't know what it is, but you're like, now I understand why people could understand. But what is it that's supernatural or paranormal?
Like I say, I really sat down and tried to replay this instant over and over and over in my head, and trying to break it down. And the more I played it back, it seems like this thing that I saw, I told my friend, like, I think it's a bat. And for some reason I'm saying it's a bat because it didn't make noise. I don't know why I thought that, like, oh, bats are silent, or something that flies silent. But I saw something that it flew, it made no noise at all. And it moved so fast that it seemed like it was void of a shape. So I know that, and what I saw in conjunction with somebody corroborating and describing to me the exact same thing that I saw, and when she said, "Oh, I saw a ghost," I'm like, "Girl, please, how do you know it wasn't? Was it a bat or a bird or something?" She said, "No, it wasn't an animal, and it flew and it didn't make any noise." I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "It was black. It was like a black form, and it went from one room to the other room without making a sound." And she said, "I went in the room and I didn't see it."
Honestly, from what you're describing, that does sound like a bat to me. Bats can be very quiet. They're very small mammals, and you'd be surprised, especially in the early mornings. Where I live in Waco, there would be bats sometimes that would go from tree to tree, and you could see them moving from tree to tree, but you wouldn't hear a single one. We got a lot of bats here in Austin. Actually, Austin's kind of known for having this big bridge on Congress where lots of bats come out from underneath it, and you can see a bunch of these animals in the air, and you may not necessarily hear them. A lot of times you can, because there's just so many of them. But they're small animals, and they can get into places where you least expect it. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a bat, honestly. But it's hard to verify stories like this, obviously, because we're not looking at anything. We're just hearing hearsay from a caller. But if I had to guess, if my money would be on a bat. But yeah, it doesn't have to be supernatural. I don't know.
The big thing is, and my money be on a bat too, because, well, I've had bats on my front porch, and I know they don't fly or sound like a bird. And because they're, in many cases, small enough, they're mice, they're flying mice. And so the same way a mouse can get into your house, a bat can get into your house. However, whatever it is, for right now, I would say that the right answer is, I don't know, but I don't see any reason to think that there's anything paranormal or supernatural.
I can agree with you guys, and that's the whole position I try so hard to keep my foundation on. But once again, that's why I say I see how some people just won't let things go. But I haven't believed in the paranormal, supernatural. I watch you guys' show to strengthen my arguments when I'm debating with family members who are still in the religious spectrum, and I don't believe this stuff, and that's what I tell people right now. Is like, when I tell the story, I just, at the end of it, I say I don't know what it was, but I definitely, I don't think it was a bat. I don't know what it was. I would even go as far as saying maybe I just hallucinated something in my girlfriend.
I'd also point out that
saw something different, or
I'd also point out that you don't know what your girlfriend saw, or whether it was the same thing, or whether you guys are just doing your best to describe a weird experience that each one of you had. So it could be that you guys saw the same thing. Could be that you didn't see the same thing. But if my girlfriend came to me and said, oh, that was a ghost, I'd have to have a sit down with, okay, how did you determine that that was a ghost? Because I have no evidence of ghosts, and I certainly am not just going to go leaping to, that weird experience I had was a ghost.
Yeah, it is interesting what we kind of consider in the popular culture of what constitutes the paranormal, right? Because it's not just the classical image of a ghost, like a I don't know, a see-through person. It's also orbs. It's also stuff moving in the night sometimes. You know, if you think about it, like we call a lot of things paranormal that are actually like really different things, you know, at least in kind of popular culture. So I don't know. My money is still on a bat, especially if it's the early mornings and, you know, you can't find it anywhere. Just because you can't find the thing either doesn't mean that it's not there either. Like Matt said, they are kind of like flying mice. But at the end of the day, I don't know. It's not going to convince me one way or the other. I know personal experience can be kind of, you know, motivating towards certain beliefs. But yeah, just based on what you told me here, I don't know. It seems like there's naturalistic explanations that we could call plausible here. So that's my take.
Yeah, I'd be more likely to call an exterminator than a ghost hunter is probably the best way I could put that.
Yeah.
If I'm going to investigate further, I'm calling the exterminator and not a ghost hunter.
Yeah, I would do that as well.
Anyway, thank you. Thanks for the call, Travis. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, guys. I love the show, and I'll continue to listen. Y'all have a good day.
Cheers. Thanks.
So I got to tell you, because I was watching Ghost Adventures with Drew this week because we were just doing that, and there is this
had to be high or something because there's no way I can put up with that show. Go ahead.
But hey, listen, there's this episode of Ghost Adventures. I talked about this on Truth Wanted. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen, Matt. They were at this old hospital or whatever, and they set up a Kinect camera, like Kinect for the Xbox camera, and they like caught like a you know, it can like read your body movements and face and stuff, and they picked up something next to a guy at this hospital, and they're like, oh, look, this Kinect picked up this ghost at this hospital, and I was dying, man. I thought it was the funniest thing.
Kinect picked up the ghost.
The Kinect picked up the ghost. We've been missing out, dude. We need to use Kinect technology to find ghosts.
Well,
that's the secret.
I have a Kinect down in a box because I haven't used my Xbox in forever.
Set it up for a 24-hour period. See if you pick something up, and then we'll know for sure. Because according to Zach Baggins of True TV's Ghost Adventures, or Travel Channel's Ghost Adventures, that's a good way to do it. That's a good way to do it. So, all
right. Well, we'll see. Alex in Missouri has a question, evidently for me. So, Alex, welcome to the show. How can I help?
Hello. I am a viewer, first-time caller. I've heard you say before that you consider yourself a hard atheist. Is that correct?
Depending, yeah.
That you're convinced that God does not exist.
Correct.
I was wondering why are you convinced of that? I myself, I'm an agnostic atheist, and I've never really heard evidence of God not existing. So yeah.
Because the world doesn't look like we would expect the world to look like if in fact there were a God. If in fact there were a God that loved and cared about people, as many people are advocating, that God would have a moral obligation and the capacity to clear things up and let people know, yes, I'm the real God and those other gods are false. And the fact that a God hasn't done that. So basically, it's kind of the argument from divine hiddenness. The world does not appear as it would if in fact the God that people were advocating for existed. It's not an absolute, I can't be absolutely certain about anything, but I think it's more probable than not that the gods, if you made a list of all the gods and you believed in one of them, you would have to say all the others are made up. And so if somebody else believed in one of the others, they would have to look at it and say, all the others are made up. I'm agreeing with both of them. As far as we can tell, people have made up every single God. And until somebody gives me a way to tell the difference between a God that was a fiction invented and a God that's actually real, I think I'm justified in considering them all to be invented fictions.
Yeah, and we also need to consider the language that we're using here, right? Because you're saying like, oh, we don't see evidence for not a god, right? And like, we wouldn't use that standard for other things. Like, oh, well, is there evidence that there's no unicorns? Like, what's that look like? You know, like, well, there's things that we can look at in the world, and we would expect to see if unicorns did exist, but we don't see, and so that's the reason why you and I might not have a belief in unicorns, for example. And I would say the same thing probably applies to a God belief. There are things that we would expect about the world to be true, or for us to be able to observe if the specific God claims being made are true. And that's important as well, because people define God in different ways. And there's different criteria as to what those gods would be. You know, obviously the omni arguments are pretty popular, right? Omnipresent, omniscient, and all that other stuff. But there's other ways people define gods as well, and you can look at those claims individually. But yeah, we wouldn't use that same standard for other stuff. You know?
Is that cleared up, Alex?
I feel like to address you, Matt, I feel like that's an argument against the Christian God.
No,
or like a
Alex.
No? Okay.
How can it? Alex, did I mention the Christian God at all? Did I say Christian God at one time? Did I say it one time in responding to you?
No, I apologize that I misspoke. I don't actually mean that, but I'm saying I feel
it's
like
a God against. It is an argument against any proposed God that has any interest in demonstrating the truth of its existence to humans. I'm not saying it's possible. It's not impossible that they're, well, I mean, I don't know whether or not it's possible, but if you want to talk about a God that doesn't demonstrate the truth of existence and doesn't care to demonstrate the truth of its existence is now indistinguishable from its non-existence. If a God is hiding and preventing humans from finding it, then from our perspective, its existence is identical logically to its non-existence.
Okay. I guess that makes sense.
Cool. Let's ease on down the road. Thanks a lot for the call, Alex. Appreciate it.
There you go.
All right.
Cleared up, ready to go.
So we have Heath in South Carolina who thinks there's good evidence for God. So I'm confused because here's the problem I have, Heath. I'm looking at what the call screener wrote here, and I'm happy to let you talk to me and Dan. But what it says is you think there's good evidence for God, but you can't give scientific evidence as he's supernatural. How did you determine that God is supernatural? And if you don't have evidence from science for that would, withstand the rigors of scientific investigation, how can you think there's good evidence? Because I don't see any way to demonstrate the truth of the supernatural at all. So let's get ready, because this could be a Nobel Prize. How can we prove the supernatural?
Okay. Well, so by like my definition of God, he created all things that are natural. So if he created everything that is natural, then that would make him supernatural. And so therefore
No. So first of all, you defined God as the creator of everything's natural. And then you say, if he created everything that's natural, then he must be supernatural. Well, that's a big if. If he created everything, that's the whole thing you're trying to prove, which makes your argument circular.
Okay, I see where you're coming from there as in a circular argument. I guess that's where you would have to come in with faith, and that's where I say that reasoning is the best argument for creation or for a God rather than natural science.
Heath,
because he created natural science.
Heath, there's a big problem here when you say that's where faith comes from, and then you start talking about reason. Faith and reason are not the same thing. They are not in the same ballpark. Faith is what you use. Faith is the excuse you give when you don't have a good reason. If you have a good reason, you don't have to appeal to faith.
I would say that I use reason to come to a logical decision and then
Me too.
things that I can't answer.
And so you use reason to come to a logical decision, and then what?
And then I use faith for the things that I can't answer. So like there's
Why? Is faith a reliable path to truth?
Well, I don't think that we can know all the truth.
Would you answer the question that I ask? Is faith a reliable path to truth?
I don't know the answers to that because I don't think we can know all the truth.
Okay, well, then we're done talking, because if you're not going to have an honest conversation, could you believe that white people are better than black people based on faith?
Wait, what?
Could you believe that white people are superior to black people based on faith?
Why? That's no.
You're saying it's impossible to believe that based on faith?
I mean, maybe someone does, but I don't.
Okay, I didn't look. I'm asking about faith as a methodology. Could someone take it on faith that white people are better than black people?
Someone, maybe, yeah.
Sure. Which means that faith is not a testament to the truth of something. Faith is a testament to what someone wants to believe.
Okay, yeah, I see where you're coming from.
So why would you ever use faith? Why not, when you cannot come up with a logical argument based on reason, why wouldn't you just say, I don't know? We don't have to do anything based on faith.
Okay, then yeah, I guess I can for certain things say I don't know, but I guess for my belief in God, that's not really more faith. When I say faith, that's for maybe it's for like prayer or for like a miracle, like that's faith. But my belief in God, that's not based off faith. That's based off reason.
Bullshit. Give me the reason.
Okay. So for me, I believe that God loves people.
I didn't ask you, Heath, what you believe. I asked you to give the reason.
Yeah.
Give the reason or go away.
That's what I'm trying to do. I mean, I don't have like one specific reason, but I reason it out via different means. So like
you don't get to start, Heath, with Heath, stop. If I'm asking you to give the reason why you believe in God, you don't get to start by saying, I believe that God loves everybody, because that is a belief, not a fact. Start with facts.
Okay, I could go with the infinite monkey typewriter theory. Do you know what that is?
I do, but it doesn't prove a God.
Infinite amount of monkeys. Well, again, it's more reasoning to it. You can't give factual, natural explanations because he's supernatural, so you have to reason it.
You're proposing a potential. You're proposing like a hypothesis, like, the universe could be a thing because of God. Right? Like that's a possible explanation, but there's a difference between reasons and possible explanations, right? I can come up with all kinds of possible explanations, but some might be more reasonable to believe in than others, right? So I think what we're trying to figure out is, we can talk about explanations all day, possible or not, but why believe in one explanation more than another, right? So why believe in the God explanation more than, say, a different kind of explanation?
To me, it just seems more reasonable.
Why?
A knock on.
Do you not realize that what you're just saying is, I believe it because it feels good to me?
Well, it makes the most sense to me.
What makes no sense to you?
He says it makes the most sense.
I said it makes the most sense to me.
How can it possibly make more sense when you don't know anything about it and don't have any way to demonstrate that it's true? So what is it we're trying to explain?
Yeah, I have like probably like 3 or 4. Like I listen to y'all's. I listen to it via podcast a lot, and I listen to a live show occasionally. And so that really got me thinking, like, why do I believe in God? And I came up with a couple of like good reasons to me that solidified why I believe in.
Well, give us one good reason that doesn't start with, here's what I think God loves people. Give us one good reason why you believe in a God.
Okay, so the infinite monkey typewriter theory. If you have a monkey typing on a keyboard for an infinite amount of time, it could theoretically produce the words of Shakespeare, correct?
No, that's not the infinite monkey typewriter thing, but it's close enough that we can just run with it. Sure. Okay. So I work as a computer engineer writing code all day, and I sit and watch, or I code a program that's millions of lines of code long. I'm wondering, like, how could this possibly randomly produce itself when I have a brain and I can't even produce one line correctly? This is called the argument from personal incredulity fallacy. You have a failing of imagination, and it's partially done because you have a misunderstanding about the infinite monkey thing. No one is saying...
Explain me what it actually is then?
Sure, because infinity is not a quantity, and so there's never going to be an infinite amount of time. You're never going to reach the end of an infinity. The hypothetical is that if you had infinite monkeys typing on infinite typewriters for all of history, they are inevitably going to produce everything that has ever been written. But that is about number theory. That is about probability. That is about for a finite set.
Exactly.
The reason, stop, Heath. The reason there's a problem there is that infinity isn't a quantity. It's a concept. You can't reach it. And so you can't have infinite monkeys. You can't have infinite mice topping forever. However, what you're doing is you're looking at, wow, I produced this code and I had to think about it. There's no way this could occur accidentally. That is an intuitive leap. And yet it didn't. The code did not happen accidentally. You created it. You don't have anything like that you're trying to explain. Do you have the works of Shakespeare that was written by monkeys?
No, but if the world has been around for an infinite amount of time, how could our
The world has not been around for an infinite amount of time.
How do you know that?
The universe, our local presentation of the universe is about 13.7 billion years old, and the Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, and humans have not been here for that entire period of time. But none of this is infinite, and we know that because it can't be infinite.
Yeah. Okay. Why can't it be infinite?
Because you can't ever, infinite is not a quantity. You cannot ever reach infinity. It cannot be a quantity. So nothing could be infinitely old or new or aged.
So we agree that the world, the universe as we know it, had a beginning.
The local presentation of the universe that we experience had a beginning. And beyond that, we don't know what to say. Maybe a multiverse, maybe something else. We don't know what the explanation is. And time breaks down at that point as well. So if time begins with the local presentation of our universe, then the universe has existed for all of time, but that is not the same thing as the universe being infinite. And none of this, by the way, gets you anywhere near proving a God.
No, I can't prove a God, but
Then why did you call?
And argue that it's reasonable.
No. That's what do you mean by proving a God? It's demonstrating that it is reasonable to conclude that a God exists would be proving a God.
I'm sorry, I was talking. I should have been listening. What did you say?
Demonstrating that it is reasonable to believe that a God exists is what I mean by proving a God. If you can demonstrate that it's reasonable to believe a God exists, I'll believe it. But you can't, and you haven't. Well, you may. I won't say you can't. You haven't.
Okay, so if we take our DNA and compare it to the infinite monkey typewriter theory, saying that our DNA...
I am so done. If you come up with infinite monkey typewriter shit again, I'm just going to hang up. DNA is not infinite. It's not a code. It is a chemical process that is entirely natural. It is self-replicating molecules that we reasonably understand.
Yeah, DNA being complicated isn't any more evidence for a God than it is for anything else, right? Again, we're going back to this idea of different explanations for the universe. I mean, I could just as easily posit that everything that we see in the universe is the result of two gods. You know, why wouldn't that be not as reasonable as just one God, you know, in that sense? I mean, I guess you can go into technicals of, you know, people say, oh, there has to go back to a one because of logic, you know, whatever. But like, there's different ideas out there about our origins, and the God explanation is just one of many different kinds of possible explanations. And our position is not that we don't think it's necessarily impossible for these explanations to be true, but rather there's not enough convincing evidence or reason or logic to bring us to the conclusion that that should be a thing we should believe in, right? Especially if we're talking about the Christian God.
Your argument, if you were to write it down in syllogistic form, or let me just do it in conversational form. Gosh, I just don't see how DNA could have happened by natural circumstances, so I think it's reasonable to believe in a God. Well, that's a failure of your imagination and a failure of your understanding of probability and statistics and DNA, but it's not an argument. It's not a reasoned argument for belief in a God. It's just an argument for, it's literally, as I mentioned a while ago, the fallacy is the argument from personal incredulity. You just can't believe that DNA could have occurred by natural circumstances, so you believe in a God. Well, tough shit. That's not the way reason works.
I would say it takes more faith to believe that DNA created itself over the past 13.8 billion years than a creator created us.
Maybe if that's what we actually believed about DNA, but that's not exactly what we believe about DNA. We don't think that DNA created itself.
Correct. And you are now no longer an honest interlocutor, because when backed into a corner, you just lash out with oh no, the atheists have more faith because it takes more faith to believe a DNA formed in that time than a God, which is bullshit, because we can calculate the odds for DNA and you can't calculate the odds for a God.
Yeah, so I'm a math minor and I've done some calculation.
Well, when you get a math major, call back.
Ooh, 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 ooh. It's getting hot. It's getting hot. It was cold this week, Matt, but it's getting hot down here in Austin, Texas.
I know. I turned off the heat today and I'm turning on the air conditioning tomorrow. Robin in DC, you're on with Dan and Matt. How are you?
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Well, I don't know. I think I'm getting ready to be told I'm incoherent.
I'm doing okay.
Well, the reason I said that, right, is because without being able to identify what is ultimate and foundational in your worldview, you will not have grounds to make any predications.
No, that's not true. I don't need ultimates. All I need is relatives. I can tell you that without knowing whether or not there's an absolute minimal or absolute maximal temperature, that it's warmer today than it was yesterday. And I can also tell you that it's pleasant today feeling to me. I don't even have to know what the actual temperature is, and we don't even have to have a scale of temperature. And I definitely don't need an absolute standard of temperature to be able to tell that. And I don't need to have any sort of, nor does there need to be any sort of absolute grounding. All I need is to presuppose, as everybody else does, the foundations of logic: identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle. That's it. Once that's done, everything else is open.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm clear. I was listening to this in our time, and there was a caller before who said, and you agreed that there was no God. Am I correct?
I am not convinced that there is a God, and for many of the gods, I'm convinced that the God doesn't exist. What the hell does that have to do with what you're talking about?
Well, we're talking about, again, when we're talking about God, in this kind of a conversation, God would be that which is the absolute cause and creator of all temporal states of affairs. Okay. So
I don't see where there's any demonstration that any such being or thing exists. But if you're going to be if you're going to be that loose with the definition, then you're not talking about a God in the traditional sense. So it would be like somebody calling in to say that God is that which explains the universe. Well, that's not the God that people believe in. So what is it you're trying to get to?
I'm making a distinction here. God would be personal. He would be a mind. Okay, that would be.
No. How do you know this? What you're just making assertions now.
I am defining a term. I'm not saying at this point whether or not it is actual.
Okay, so define your term.
I'm defining it. Okay.
So I'm writing it down. Let's go.
I'll say this again. God is that which is the personal, absolute cause and creator of all temporal states of affairs. Okay.
Here's the problem. Go ahead. How do you know that any such being exists and that those properties are the properties of the being that actually exist?
We know that God exists, and
no, we don't.
Self-disclosure. How do you know that?
Wait, we know that God exists because of self-disclosure?
Yeah, you asked me how I know that God exists, and I told you I know God exists.
So God has disclosed himself to you.
Correct.
How?
In natural and in general and in special revelation.
Okay. So how do you know? Give me an example of special revelation and how you know it's revelation.
Special revelation would be, for example, it would be God's direct communication with individuals, and this direct communication is, in this case, we'll be talking about the Bible. So it would be God's direct.
That is not direct communication with an individual.
Hold on.
No, you hold on. You hold on. The Bible is a book written by men, as far as we can tell. Even if you want to claim that it was inspired, you have to prove that, not assert it. So if you want to say that direct revelation That is direct revelation from a God to an individual. No book is involved.
Okay. I'm defining, you asked me what special revelation is, and I'm defining it, okay? Special revelation is God's direct communication with people, and that revelation specifically has been recorded infallibly and inerrantly.
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. You do not get to point to a story that claims direct revelation and claim that it is direct revelation. That is dishonest. That is like saying, hey, my aunt told me that she heard from aliens, therefore she heard from aliens. That is a fallacy.
Yeah, or if Matt wrote a book about his aunt telling him about aliens, and then I read that book, that is not special revelation to me either, which you did say that you had, personal disclosure, and I'd say that's not true. Anybody can read the Bible. That doesn't mean that we have any more knowledge than, any other person.
The fact that you are unconvinced or do not believe in the revelation has no bearing upon whether or not the revelation is true. You're
correct.
Yes.
But we didn't say that that's what had bearing on it. This isn't whether or not we believe, whether or not Dan and I believe is irrelevant. What we're saying is you cannot prove that this was in fact direct revelation. So you don't get to call it direct revelation.
What is your standard of proof?
I'm not going to just accept somebody's word for it. How would you show that this in fact is direct revelation from God?
You invoked proof. I'm asking you, what is your standard of proof?
No, sir, that's not the way this works. You are going to present your argument and it will either be accepted or rejected based on your argument. My position, which I've made abundantly clear, is that I don't think it's possible to prove direct revelation, and neither did David Hume. Because revelation is necessarily first person, and to everyone else, revelation is hearsay. It's not my fault that you have decided to stake your argument on a claim that you cannot prove.
Okay. 30 seconds ago, you just told me that I cannot prove to you.
And I retracted it, so drop it and do what you could say you can do or go away. Can you prove that there's direct? Can you prove?
So you just did.
Can you shut the fuck up? Can you demonstrate the truth of your claim that God has directly revealed something to someone?
Okay, so you just asked me if I could prove something. What is your standard of proof?
I don't. Wow. Are you dense? Your standard of proof is the one in question. You are convinced that you have evidence that is reasonable to conclude, you are convinced that you can reasonably demonstrate that God directly communicated with someone. I am not convinced. Make your case or go away.
Right. So again, in order to prove something, right, I must be in coherence with somebody's ultimate.
Nope, you're going away.
That was like the first thing we talked about. We don't need that ultimate standard to demonstrate something to be true.
See, I'm willing to believe anything that somebody can demonstrate. And so he's like, oh, I want to know what your standard of proof is. Well, my standard of proof, or the quality and quantity of evidence that determines what is sufficient to believe something, changes depending on what the claim is. If you say, I just got a new puppy, I'm going to take your word for it, because I did too. If you're going to say that puppy was abducted by aliens, I'm going to need more proof.
Yeah. And especially with the God claim, because there are literally thousands and thousands of books of people claiming they've talked to God.
Yeah.
Like that they can't all be true because they have mutually exclusive claims in there. So we have to figure out which one's real and which ones aren't. I haven't found any yet that are showed me to be real in any meaningful sense. So
it's a shame that was wasted, because if, for example, let's imagine that there was a God who had directly communicated with someone. I don't know how to show that that's true. Matter of fact, the only way that I can think of for a reasonable person to be convinced is for that God to forcibly convince them. Because how do you tell whether or not you're hallucinating or whatever?
Here's the thing. We have this tradition of individual people talking to God, because it seems to be the individual people that are having these experiences most of the time. Obviously, that's not true for, some cases. There's group phenomenon and stuff. But like, if there was a God, right? Like, why would he not talk to everybody? at once, or at least a large group of people? Why would he just talk to one person? That seems like one of the worst possible ways you could communicate, right? Like, if you want to convince somebody that you're real, why talk to just Moses? Why not get to everybody?
Yeah.
You know?
Why do you need Moses? And by the way, who had a speech impediment, so Aaron's got to do the speaking for him. Why doesn't God just show up and talk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. But I'm just a human, man. You know, I'm just a human. I don't know.
Well, we're getting ready to be asked another question that's kind of similar here. Adam in Illinois, you have a question for us.
Yes, hello, thank you. I'm a first-time caller. I've never watched a show before.
Okay, this will be easy.
This is really cool.
So the question it says you're asking is there any logical reason to be an atheist? Are there good scientific, factual, philosophical reasons for your position? That's your question?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. The reason I'm an atheist is because no God claim has ever met its burden of proof, period.
No God claim has ever met his burden of proof.
Yes, no one's ever proved that there's a God, and until that happens, there is not sufficient reason to believe there is one. Just like I don't believe in Bigfoot or fairies or unicorns because there isn't sufficient evidence. And until that changes, the default position is to not believe that a God exists until there's good reason to believe that God exists.
I disagree with that. I don't think that's a good.
Well, you're wrong. That's just a fact. That's not even a dispute. That until something is demonstrated to exist, it is not reasonable to believe that it does, right?
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, that's it. That's all we're saying. God hasn't been demonstrated to exist, and so we don't believe he does.
No, you didn't say that. You said a claim.
Yes, I fucking did. I've been doing this for 15 years. This may be your first call, but it's not mine. I do not believe that a God exists, and the reason for that is that no God claim has met its burden of proof.
Okay, so in the Bible it says if a cloud is full of rain, it pours itself out upon the earth. It says whether a tree falls toward the north or toward the south, where the tree falls, there it shall be. Is that
Adam? What does this have to do with a God? I do not give one flying fuck what the Bible says, especially when it's talking about trees.
This is a claim. It claims that whether a tree falls toward the north or toward the south, where the tree falls, there it's going to be.
What the hell does that have to do with a God?
Oh, well, the Bible is the word of God, right?
No.
Usually.
No. You have to demonstrate that the Bible is the word of God. You don't just get to claim it's the word of God.
That's what I said allegedly. That's why I said allegedly.
Well, I don't care about allegedly. I care about demonstrably. That's the thing. Allegedly, there are thousands of gods, right?
Yeah, and if the claim you're trying to make here is here's a true thing that the Bible said, okay, well, there's lots of books that have some true things in them and some false things. That doesn't mean that, you know, they're always going to be one and the same.
Right, and that's where you got to sift through all the truth and all the not truths.
No,
yeah.
you don't sift through the truths and not truths. You find evidence and you demonstrate it. Do you have evidence that can demonstrate the truth of your claim that a God exists?
Sure. The two main arguments you probably already know, that's the intelligent design argument and the moral argument. You know those ones?
So first of all, those are categories of arguments that have individual arguments. Adam, let me do you a favor. You are not equipped. Did somebody put you up to calling into the show? Because you are not equipped for this.
I disagree, but what you're getting at?
I asked if you had a way to demonstrate that a God exists. And what you're citing is arguments, but those arguments are flawed, as we've demonstrated over and over again. Do you have an argument you'd like to demonstrate? Because Dan could pick it apart.
Sure. The intelligent design argument is if you see a building, like a building, you know that there was a builder, even if you never saw the builder.
No.
How would you know that? Well, you
would.
Your building pop out of the ground?
No, sir. Okay, Dan, go ahead.
Well, it's just, okay, so the thing with the buildings, right, is I've seen how construction works, and like we can observe these methods happening. And so it might be most reasonable for me to, assume that human beings built a building, because I've only ever really seen human beings build buildings outside of natural structures that, other animals have created and stuff like that. Right. I've never seen a god do anything, period. I've never actually seen that happen. So it's not reasonable for me to conclude that a god has done anything, because I don't know what a god can do, and I don't know what they can't do. And I also don't know if they're even there. Right. So they have to be there first for us to even say anything about it.
So you don't even get to call something a building until you can demonstrate that it is in fact a building. So like, imagine for a second that you have a creek flowing through your backyard. And one day you go out there and the creek is dammed up with sticks and mud. Did that happen naturally, or did a beaver do that? And how can you tell the difference?
So how you could tell that? I want to address your other points, but the sticks and the dams, that could be a beaver, it could be the river doing that.
I understand it could be both. That's why I said, how do you tell the difference?
Right.
Yeah, how could you tell a book made itself?
Stop trying to come up with a counter argument and answer my question. How do you tell the difference between a natural dam of sticks and wood and mud and a beaver dam? How do you tell the difference?
I don't think I could tell the difference.
Really? So there's nothing you could do to figure out whether or not it's a beaver dam or a random. Then how the hell did you determine that reality is most likely created by a god? If you can't tell the difference between, because I can tell the difference between a beaver dam and a random assortment of sticks and mud.
A book could not make itself by chance. Monkeys aren't going to make it. Beaver's not going to make it. A river.
You're not listening at all. Your brain has hit that stalled point where it's just now you want to go on to the next thing in your script. Please don't do that.
Well, no, this is one point at a time, but you're not listening.
No, sir. I'm listening, and Dan is listening, and we've heard this over and over again. The problem is that we're asking the questions that are supposed to help you understand the problem, and you're not even trying. You just gave up. You can't tell the difference between a beaver dam and something that looks like a beaver dam, right? You can't think of any way to test or investigate that.
Well, I mean, if there's a bunch of river sediments, if it looks like the water rushed it together, then you could point to that. If there's no beavers in the location, then you wouldn't blame it because there's no beavers in the location.
But if a beaver built it, don't you think maybe we'd find evidence that it's maybe hollow on the inside, that it's a den, that there's beaver footprints there, that there's beaver tail prints on there, right. That we could set up a camera there and watch and see if there's a beaver, and yet you just gave up.
Well, no, you can do all those things, but but now what you're doing is you're just throwing arbitrary information in there that what you didn't give me to start with.
No, sir, no. I'm not throwing any arbitrary information in. I asked you how we could tell the difference between a dam that was intentionally constructed by a beaver and one that just naturally formed due to water flow. And you gave up.
Yeah, and I first
there's a reason for that.
And then I said you could look at
Adam, stop. There's a reason I asked that question. How do you tell the difference between a universe that was created by a god and a universe that came about by natural circumstances?
Well, the first one, that the universe came about by natural. Well, second one, so the universe came about by natural circumstances, is impossible.
No, it's not.
It is just simply.
How did you determine it's impossible? You couldn't even tell the difference between a beaver dam and some mud and sticks, and now you've determined that it's impossible for a universe to form naturally? How did you do that? What is your field of expertise here? Because so far, nobody else in the world has been able to determine that.
Well, no, lots of people have. It's just people don't.
No, lots of people claim that it's impossible. Nobody's been able to demonstrate that it's impossible. You know why? How many universes do we have to investigate?
Just the one.
Just the one. And so until we have another one to compare it to, see, that's what's needed. You need to be able to compare a beaver dam to a bunch of sticks and mud. And when you compare the two, you can see the differences between them. You can't do that with a universe, can you, Adam?
No, and you don't need to do that.
You don't need to do that how did you demonstrate that it's impossible?
Well, on your universe question, like, how could you, if there's only one God, then how could you like prove God if you can't compare him to anything?
No, that's not the way it works. There's only one me, but I can prove that I exist.
Yeah.
You fatally misunderstand this thing about uniqueness. With only one universe, we can't compare it to determine what the likely explanations for the existence of the universe are.
Can you say that? Oh, wait, what did you say?
No. No, you can rewind because I'm go ahead, Dan.
Well, like an analogy I like to make with stuff like this is if I have a field and I have a ball in my hand and I throw that ball, and I'm really thinking I'm just throw it, and we can look at where that ball lands. We can say, oh my goodness, wow, what are the chances that this ball landed right at this spot? Wow, this is really crazy, really incredible. Nobody really thinks that way because, well, the ball's going to end up where it ends up. It's only when we think that there's an intention involved, then that becomes more impressive. If there was a target in the field and I threw the ball and I hit it, you could conclude that I was aiming for that target. But what happens with these kinds of arguments is the ball is already in the field and we're painting the target underneath the ball, right? Because we're already here. We have a bias because we're existent beings in the universe and we're these thinking monkeys that think that we're really important and really special out here in the middle of nowhere, universe-wise, and think that, oh, well, there must be some reason why we're here. This is just too crazy. This is just too much of a coincidence. But the fact is, we haven't really had any reason to believe otherwise, as in terms of cosmic intentions as to why we're here, as design as we're here, because we can trace ourselves back as human beings back as to how we got to the current forms that we exist as life. And, all that process, that process being evolution, also seems to be natural, in nature, right? It's a natural process. There doesn't need to be any divine explanations for evolution and how it happens. So there's no reason for us to really conclude that the beginning of all this process has to be supernatural either. At least, not yet. We haven't really been given a reason to think that way. So that's the way I think about it anyway.
Can I answer the question about how we know it's impossible for the universe to make itself?
I did. No. Stop, Adam. This is the problem. You did not say it was impossible for the universe to make itself. I would agree with that. You said it was impossible for the universe to arise by natural circumstances. Right. Don't you dare pretend you said something else or that I said something else.
Okay.
You said it was impossible for the universe to arise by natural circumstances. How do you prove that that's impossible?
Yeah, it's impossible for something to come from nothing.
No, sir. It's, first of all, I'm about completely done with you, Adam, because first you said it was impossible for the universe to come from natural causes. Then you lied and misrepresented it and claimed that the universe can't make itself was what you said, when that's not what you said and it's not what I said. And now, after that correction, you have moved on to a third claim that about something coming from nothing, which also isn't what was said, and also you can't demonstrate it. Have you ever been able to examine nothing to see if something could come from it?
No, you couldn't.
Well, you don't know that you couldn't because nothing isn't something you can interact with. But also,
right.
Hang on.
Never doing nothing.
Oh my God, Adam, please stop. Nobody is claiming that something came from nothing except for theists who advocate for creation ex nihilo.
Yes, they do. They teach you in public schools there was a Big Bang, there was nothing.
No, sir. I'm sorry, but you are ignorant about science. The Big Bang is not a claim that something came from nothing. You do not understand Big Bang cosmology. The Big Bang cosmology is that everything came from everything. It's about an expansion. It's not about something from nothing. Science doesn't ever say, oh, there was nothing and something came from it. Now, hang on. I have friends in science. What part of hang on was too difficult? There are friends and scientists, including like Lawrence Krauss, who will talk about a universe from nothing. But what physicists are talking about when they say nothing is not nothing in the sense of the colloquial that you're using. What they're talking about is essentially an energy state where it averages out to nothingness, but there's still something there because there's properties. You're talking about something that has no properties, which cannot exist.
Yes, I'm aware of that. They do redefine what nothing is, but then
they're not.
Ask the question, where did that come from?
It didn't come from anywhere. And so here's the potential explanations. The thing that you want to know, where did it come from? Maybe it didn't come from anywhere. Maybe it's just always existed. Maybe it comes from somewhere that we don't know and we can't investigate, because we cannot look at anything prior to the origination of the universe we experience. Time breaks down then, physics break down then. It is absurd to ask what happened before the Big Bang, because the model shows that there was no time. Time began with the Big Bang. So it is patently absurd to say what came before the Big Bang. However, you started with intelligent design, a building. Now you've gone to something can't come from nothing. You are dancing around through everything that you've been programmed to say, and I'm not convinced you have thought about or listened to a word we've said.
I've listened to, I've heard what you said, and yeah, I've heard.
Then why have you gotten it wrong repeatedly? Why is it that when I said that you need to demonstrate that it's impossible for a universe to arise from natural causes, why did you get that wrong twice and go with, instead of universe from natural causes, why did you go with universe create itself and universe something from nothing? When neither of those are what I said, that's not the hallmark of someone who's actually listening.
Well, you said a bunch of things. I'm just trying to remember what you said. You're saying a lot of things, and I'm trying to be polite and listen to everything you're saying, but you guys are saying a lot. The universe could not create itself.
Nobody claimed it did. Why are you going back to that 30 seconds after I accused you of not listening and parroting that shit back to me? You're doing it again. Why?
You say the universe could arise from natural causes.
No, I said you haven't. Wow, you cannot demonstrate that it's impossible for that to happen, is what I said.
I'm going to get there if you'll let me. You said
you can't.
The universe could arise from natural causes.
No, I didn't.
You don't believe that?
Can you show that that it's impossible for the universe to arrive from natural causes?
Yes. Okay. So
then hurry up and get to it.
Well, yeah, this is the thing. So we ask, where did you come from? You came from your parents. Where did they come from? And their parents, and so on and so forth. When you get to the origin of the universe, you say, well, where did that come from? Well, I'll say, well, there's the Big Bang. What was before the Big Bang? Well, they'll say there was nothing. There was no time before the Big Bang. But then they say that it's not really nothing. It's something that's like nothing, but it's not really nothing. Well, then that's not really nothing then. Whatever that was either had a beginning or it's eternal.
And how do you tell how do you know whether whatever that was, how do you tell the difference between it being eternal or having a beginning? How do you investigate that?
Well, if it had a beginning, then the next question would be, then what came after that? And then what came after that? And what came after that?
But that's not, you don't know. How do you tell the difference between whatever started the universe, whether you think that whatever started the universe was eternal because you think it was God?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and you can't demonstrate that. You can't even demonstrate whether or not what came before the universe was eternal or not, or whether it makes sense to say what came before the universe.
It's a two-part question. We know that whatever created the universe, you can.
No. Stop, Adam. You do not get to say whatever created the universe because you haven't demonstrated that the universe was created. You don't get to call something created until you can demonstrate that it was created.
Wait, we're here. Like the universe is real.
Doesn't mean it was created, though.
Doesn't mean it, yeah, go ahead, Dan. It doesn't mean it's created.
Yeah. Okay, well, don't get hung up on the word created.
I tell you
should
what,
get hung up on the words.
yeah.
Though. Words are important.
I wish you would get hung up on a few more words because you are way too loosey-goosey with words, and we're going to drop this call and move on to somebody else. Think about it some more, give it some thought, call us back or call Dan on Truth Wanted, but I'm not going to keep going when you are unable repeatedly to accurately express what I'm telling you, and then you just go on to repeat the same nonsense over and over. It's not a creation until you demonstrate that it's a creation, period.
Yeah, Adam said something earlier that was interesting, which was that in the public schools now they teach you that the Big Bang happened and the universe was created from nothing. And like, first of all, I didn't get any cosmology in my public school education. Maybe that's just a result of the Texas public education system, but I wish I did. I honestly wish I did, because my understanding of the Big Bang was exactly what Adam was saying, which was, everything was created from nothing, which is it's more complicated than that, right? Like, it's way more complicated than that. But like, I only ever heard of what the Big Bang was from other Christians that told me when the Big Bang was supposedly is, and I didn't understand what it really meant until honestly starting looking into the atheist community talking about it, because it just wasn't that stuff's not common knowledge. Like, we're talking about a really complicated subject that physicists who have been studying this for decades couldn't even tell you exactly what's happening at every single part, right? And to just say, oh, well, we know this as a fact that it can happen this way. Well, I don't think we do. And by the way, everything we know about today's cosmology, modern cosmology, does not fit into any biblical application whatsoever. There is nothing in the Bible, nothing that demonstrates or even claims to the origins of the universe that we now understand through modern science. And people have been trying to make that work, trying to shove that square peg into that triangle hole for years, and it doesn't work. From the creation story all the way to the revelations of John, it doesn't work. And we can look at that, and that there's lots of arguments for that, but yeah, it doesn't work. The Bible was not talking about the Big Bang, so we can't even go there either.
Yeah, there's a lot of strange stuff. All right. So here's part of the problem. And I get it. There's people who are like, oh, Matt stays with a call too long, or Matt hangs up too early, or whatever else. And I don't care. I'm going to stay with a call or drop it at whatever time I feel like it.
Sure. But
if you begin with, the universe can't create itself. Well, I would agree. And I don't know anybody in science who's saying the universe did create itself. But something can't come from nothing. Well, I would agree, kind of. I just don't know how you reach that conclusion, because there isn't a nothing you could investigate, and you can't do an act on a nothing, and a nothing evidently can't do it. It doesn't have properties, which is why when physicists talk about nothing, it has properties.
Right.
But when philosophers talk about nothing, it doesn't. And that's why you got to make that distinction. But something created the universe. No, we live in a universe, we experience a universe, and there is some explanation for the local presentation of the universe. Right now, Big Bang cosmology is the best explanation we currently have. And so to say, what's the explanation for the Big Bang? Well, that is, we don't know. Because we can't, the thing is, it's just not satisfying to the people who are convinced that they have the right answer. And that's why I went with the beaver dam thing, which I'll do again, which is this notion, in order to determine what the best explanation for anything is, you need to look at all candidate explanations, determine which are more likely. The problem is that theists are advocating for a candidate explanation, God did it, that they cannot demonstrate, that they cannot calculate a probability for, that they cannot show the truth of, and which carries with it, it entails and encompasses properties that are problematic, because the universe doesn't look like what it should if their God is there.
Yep, for sure.
Here's somebody that this might actually be fun here. Whoops, my call-in studio thing's not working very well. There we go. Harmon is it Michigan?
Yeah.
Awesome. How cold is it there right now?
It's pretty cold.
All right. Well, you've got questions for me and Dan, so let's have at it and have some fun.
Yeah. Okay. I kind of have to set it up a little bit. It's about the third eye. I just use the third eye as a concept. I'm not saying I I mean, I kind of believe the third eye is real, but mostly as a concept.
What do you mean real as a concept? I don't understand that.
Huh?
Explain what you mean. What do you mean by third eye? What are we talking about here?
I just want to say this one thing is that I'm kind of ADHD, so I kind of ramble a little bit.
Well, don't worry. We'll keep you on track.
Yeah, Dan might let you ramble for a while, but I'm really good at shutting that shit down. But.
Okay. Well, I have some studies I can reference after I say this, but so basically the pineal gland is in the brain, and it's directly in front or behind of where the third eye is supposed to be on the forehead, and I know.
This is why Truth Wanted exists, by the way. I get all the calls that Matt sighs at. But yeah, go ahead, Harmon.
Well, I basically have 2 points, and I have 2 references for studies to show that some people. I'm not saying the studies are 100% accurate. I'm just saying there are some people that have tested on this. And basically, that people there's some people that think that the brain releases DMT in the pineal gland, and that is where the third eye came from. The concept of the third eye.
Yeah, I've heard about this. You know, from my understanding, it is true that DMT is a naturally occurring molecule in the body, right? And so there's explanations as to why, but like it's not fully understood. And the fact that we have the pineal gland and the fact that its functions are not totally known to us makes me hesitant to make any sort of claim about, you know, it's anything it can do for us. But, you know, when people talk about the pineal gland, they're usually talking about some sort of extrasensory phenomenon, right? And you're talking about the third eye. Like, are you saying that when you're talking about these studies, you know, I understand that, yeah, the DMT part, yeah, that's probably true from what I understand. But do you think that gives us some sort of secret abilities or some sort of access to the spiritual? Because that's what people usually mean when they're talking about this.
Yeah, I want to get to that. I have basically 2 points, and my first point kind of sets up the first one, or the second. Okay. The first one is if ancient cultures, the third eye has been in ancient culture for I don't know how long, but I know it's been a long time. And the first point, if it's been in ancient culture for so long, basically, what does that mean? That's kind of my question to you.
You know, there's a lot of old shit out there. I don't know if that means it has any relevancy to the truth of the world. I mean, God has been around for a long time as a concept too, and we're not big fans of that necessarily. So I don't know what ancient people believing something has to do with the truthiness.
As far as I can tell, the truth of an idea is not in any way impacted by the number of people who believe it, or how sincerely they believe it, or how long they have believed it. That's not what we use to determine truth. And by the way, as a general rule, when you look at ancient ideas, they're more likely to be wrong than the modern ideas because we have learned and grown since then. I mean, some of it they're going to get right. It's not like ancient people were idiots. They still survived. But just because an idea is old doesn't mean anything. Look at Chinese medicine and stuff. That is a load of dangerous bullshit that's just been passed around all that time. It's not like we should stay away from modern, big pharma Western medicine. Well, that's the reason that the world is better. That's the reason why the average lifespan of human beings is increased. But yeah, old ideas may or may not be that good.
Yeah. So that's point one. So what's point two you got?
Well, I just wanted to say about point one is that, my point was that even though ancient cultures didn't technically know about the pineal gland, now we can kind of, we don't have to believe it. We can see parallels between them. So that was my point.
No. So Harmon, can you see the TV? I mean, can you see us right now?
No. Okay. I'm just listening.
Right. So I want you to do this. So take your right and left fingers and point them directly at your eyes. Okay. And then from there, just keep them at that same level. Isn't everything like, isn't there a huge amount of space behind your eyes and forehead? And depending on what angle you're at, I could be pointing at my pineal gland from my ears, right? I could be pointing at my pineal gland from the back of my head. I could be pointing at it up through my ass. So this notion that the pineal gland is directly behind where the third eye is supposed to be is a load of shit, because if the third eye was supposed to be on top of the head, that would be directly above the pineal gland. And if the third eye was on the back of the head, that would be directly behind the pineal gland. And if the third eye were in my anus, that would be directly below the pineal gland. So what is it we're trying to demonstrate?
Well, I did see one diagram that the pineal gland was connected, well, in some way, sort of connected to the eyes to a degree. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but
well, as it's part of the brain.
Yeah,
if it's on the ass or if it's on the forehead or wherever it is, the fact that they match up. That's
what I'm pointing out is that you can match this up anyway. If somebody had imagined that the third eye was in the back of the head, that would line up, and if it was in my butt, it would line up.
Well, they're very close. I mean, if it was in your butt, it would be very far away.
Okay, but why is it surprising that people want to put a third eye directly above the two eyes, and all three of those are now still in front of the pineal gland? You're seeing a coincidence and trying to make something of it.
I'm not saying the third eye is real. I'm just saying that what the brain can produce, the images that we can see during meditation and things like that, then the parallels between them. I kind of lost myself there, but
I mean, we can see images in our head when we meditate. I don't, people call that a third eye experience because it's like the mind's eye, right? And we know that the mind is in the brain. Actually, not all ancient cultures recognize that, but I don't think that that's super amazing to recognize. But I think we've kind of belabored the point, right?
Yeah.
I really want to get to the next one.
Yeah.
That was my fault. I'll stop now because I want Dan to be able to address this point well.
Okay. So my next one was going to be that there's studies on this, and some people, I kind of was arguing with people online about this just so I could, to make me think more about it. But the study that I'll tell you about the studies later or right now if you want, you could look them up. But the brain, some people think the brain releases DMT during meditation, and you've heard people can trip on DMT, but basically my point is that if the brain has the tool to make a way for us to go on a psychedelic trip, what does that mean? Like,
well, because I don't think it does. I think these claims are kind of exaggerated a little bit. Like, yes, DMT is a naturally occurring molecule in the human body, but it's never to the amount when people are actually tripping on DMT. I get it. People have, experiences through meditation, but I don't know if that necessarily means anything. I mean, we also kind of trip out when we dream as well. So what, that's a thing that happens in the body. I mean, like there's also just a lot of things about the body that we don't know that may function for us now currently in ways that didn't previously. A big example of this is the pancreas. That's changed over time. What are you talking about? The part? I got mine removed. What do you call it? The
appendix.
The appendix. That's what it is. I couldn't even remember. Yeah.
Gosh,
yeah,
so here's a great thing, because Dan got his appendix removed, and clearly, even though the appendix is nowhere near his brain or his third eye, it impacted his brain to the point where he can't even remember what it's called.
Right, I couldn't remember the fucking thing. But yeah, I got my shit removed because it was inflamed when I was 12 years old. That had no benefit to me whatsoever. In fact, if I lived in another time period, I probably could have died from that. But our body is weird and it does weird shit. Again, it doesn't really mean anything to me. I don't know if it means that any ancient beings or spiritual beings or God beings were trying to give us natural ways to trip out. I think that's what a lot of people think, but I don't think what we see is necessarily evidence for that.
Plus, if God needed us, well, why would God need us to trip out?
So we can enlighten ourselves.
Can't God just talk to us?
I guess. Yeah. I mean, it's also going to be dependent on your specific religious beliefs and stuff.
I got to figure out where this is going, Harmon, because I just looked at a picture, and literally, if you go to Wikipedia and look at the entry for pineal gland, It's teeny tiny, as I thought, and it's pretty much dead center in the middle of your head, which means I was even more right than I thought, because not only can I just point to my eyes and get to it, like everywhere, as long as I'm on the axis pointing to the center of my head, there it is. So it's not like a third eye.
Well,
You know what would be like a third eye? A third eye.
well, it's the fact that people found the third eye, and it's,
No. People did not find a third eye. There is no third eye.
well, people found the concept.
No, people think things, and it's either real or it's not.
Yeah, the third eye is not the same thing as the pineal gland. Those are two different things.
It's the parallels that they line up. The eyes, it's right next to each other. It's just, I mean, it's a stretch. Yeah.
Yes, it's a stretch.
I don't know.
I'm glad we got there. I gotta get to some other callers, Harmon, but just if you're somewhere where, well, I'm not even going to go down that road.
No. I'll say this.
Okay.
If you have more to say, please contact me using your third eye, and I will relay it here on the show.
Not only that, but you can call into Truth Wanted to talk to Dan.
That's right.
More about a third eye. And I'm pretty confident that at some point, Dan's going to get an expert on the third eye or the pineal gland.
Yeah, I haven't done that yet, but I really should.
Yeah. But on that note, Harmon, I got to go because we're almost out of time, and there's 2 more callers I still want to try and get to. This one, I'm hoping I can be fairly quick with it. Olivia here in Texas, thank you so much for waiting. You're on with Dan and Matt.
Hello. Okay.
Hi.
So I'm agnostic myself, and one question that has always really gotten to me when it comes to beliefs and everything is it's pretty general. It can go for all religions, honestly. Do you think that so many supposed eyewitnesses were murdered in the name of their religion if their religion was a lie?
So this is easy, Olivia.
Sorry.
Is there a particular religion we're going to talk about?
I Christianity, but like
Sure.
I'm more thinking about like the
Olivia, it's really easy.
And-
Name an eyewitness on behalf of Christianity that was killed.
the disciples, right? Like
How do you know? How do you know that?
murdered, right?
How do you know that there were How do you know that there were eyewitnesses, and how do you know that they were killed?
True. Well, you don't, and so I wonder if
Yep, that's great. Now here's the second question, and I apologize. I'm only trying to rush because we're down to like the very limit here, and I trusted that you would get this. So right off the bat, we don't know for sure if there were any eyewitnesses, and we don't know if they were killed. But
Right.
if there was some eyewitness and they were killed, does that prove that the story's true?
no.
And if there were other people who were killed because they sincerely believed, because there have been martyrs for many different religions,
Yep.
it doesn't prove that any of them were true. And so what we have are stories that are designed to make you ask the very question you did, Olivia, which is, well, hang on. If there were these eyewitnesses and they were killed, why would that happen? Rather than the real question, which is, did it happen? And what would that prove?
Okay.
Yep.
Right. Okay. That's my call. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks,
That's
Olivia.
it.
I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, and the martyrdom stories, by the way, depending on how far back you go, pretty ridiculous and pretty crazy. I recommend you guys look some of that up if you haven't already, especially martyrs in the Catholic Church. Fun stuff.
A couple reminders before we get on. I'm gonna put Russ here. Russ, you're on, but give me just 1 minute to say a couple things. Russ in Missouri wants to talk to us about some things and about ways to potentially improve the conversation. And I know that Dan and I are both interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
But a couple of quick reminders as we come up on the end of all of this. First of all, thank you everybody for tuning in. Click like and subscribe. I find it interesting that there's exactly $666 in donation above the show.
Hell yes.
Which is awesome. But there's also almost 6,000 people watching right now. And so somebody is going to troll to break that so that it doesn't just stay at 666. I know already. The other thing I want to say, because I don't know how if we're going to get time to wrap everything up, is that as I mentioned at the top of the show, The United States is over 500,000 people dead now, 510,000 from COVID.
Yep.
Things are getting better. We have vaccines. We are trying to get them out. We are in no way. Someone in my life got COVID and then immediately said, "Oh, well, I don't have to get the vaccine now." That's not how the vaccine works. That's not the truth. If you are able to get vaccinated, you should get vaccinated. Please, please, please keep yourselves safe. Follow the guidelines in your area. Russ, thank you so much for letting me do that. You have tips for us about misconceptions we both have. So let's fix this. Fix the world. Russ, you want to fix the world with us?
Let's do it.
Well, I know that we're a little bit pressed for time here, but I do kind of have to go through things in a chronological order here. But when I was a kid, I had no religious background at all. And all of a sudden, I was 10 years old, woke up on the couch, and I had an amazing feeling that God existed. And that feeling has never left me. But when I went to school, I got very deep into the heavy mathematics and the heavy physics. And so you have to let science control your beliefs, not your emotions. And I struggled with this for a long time. And I think a lot of it pushed me to study science even more because I needed answers. I needed to know if God existed or didn't exist. And anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a little layout from the Big Bang all the way to evolution. And
we don't have time for that, Russ. That's a lot. I don't know about that. Is there a way you can make your point just slightly more concise for the show here?
It says here that theists and atheists have misconceptions. What misconception do atheists have? Because, and I'll caution you, I don't know if you know this, but I have been both, and so has Dan.
Mm-hmm.
So what misconception do we have that needs to be corrected?
So the misconception is that everything in the universe is in what's called a perfect order.
I don't have that misconception. I have never, ever, when I was a believer, nor now, have I thought that everything in the universe is in perfect order.
Yeah, me neither.
So clearly we don't have the misconception you thought we had. So that was a misconception on your part. What other misconceptions do we have?
Well, you do.
Wait, did you just say we do?
Correct. You just haven't let me finish.
Oh, no, Russ, you're finished. Because when you tell us that we think that we have a misconception that the universe is in perfect order, and we both tell you that we do not think the universe is in perfect order, then we clearly do not have the misconception that you claim we do. And then when you accuse us afterwards of having that misconception, you're done. That was a good sigh right there at the end, but
I don't know what perfect order. I don't even know what that means, really.
So this notion. So first of all, when I was a believer, I didn't think it was perfect order because God doesn't say on the seventh day when he rested, it is perfect. He says it is good.
Yeah.
And then this notion of perfect order, there is we don't know whether or not true randomness exists, but it may just be that things are so complicated that we cannot see a pattern and therefore view it as random. But at no point would I look at the universe and claim that it is in perfect order, just that it is in order. I don't even know what perfect would mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like order seems to be a good enough word. Why does that have to be perfect? What's the difference between a perfect order and an imperfect order? I guess. Yeah. I don't know.
It's just really weird that if I were to, so this is one of the things that frustrates me so much about theists in particular. And I don't know. I don't know if I ever did this. I don't know if you did this or not, Dan, but if I went to a theist and said, "You believe this," and they looked at me and said, "No, I don't," and I said, "Yes, you do," I would expect them to walk off and never continue to talk to me, because now I'm trying to pretend like I know what's in their head better than they do.
Yeah, I definitely did that as a Christian. I think I definitely strawmanned. If you go back to my original video with Anthony Magnabosco, I gave a definition of atheism that I would scream at if I heard it today. I definitely the words that I used to call myself maybe made sense for me, but it didn't describe the large body of people that actually use those words. You know, the word atheist was a word that I mostly got from other Christians, ironically enough, because most of my experience with other atheists that I knew were atheists were told about from stories from other Christians. So it becomes a straw man just via culture, you know. And if you're not watching shows like Atheist Experience or Truth Wanted, maybe you don't know what we mean when we say a lot of these words, or like have some weird ideas about what we do or don't think, like believing the universe is in perfect order. Because again, I don't know what that means.
It's funny because I get accused of a lot of things, and I love Dan. Dan's one of my favorite people. You know, I love Truth One. Is one of the reasons why I get Dan on here. But Dan and I have two very different personalities when we get to this. I am much, even when I'm in Zen mode, I'm probably less patient than Dan is about letting people talk. But when I'm not in Zen mode, when I'm not taking any shit mode, I get accused of all kinds of stuff. But I don't think I've ever. All right, let me check this back. If at any point I had a call with a theist and I asserted what their beliefs was, and they came back and said, no, they didn't believe it. And I went, oh, yes, you do. If that ever happened, then that needs to be corrected, because people can be wrong about what they believe. It's entirely possible I could be wrong about understanding. It may even be the case that Russ knows my brain better than I do. It's just, I don't think that's the case. And when you walk in to assert that you know what somebody believes while they're telling you they believe the opposite, that's just ridiculous and rude.
Yeah, it is. And also, you know, we're also in a unique position because if you're in a religious structure, particularly one that's highly organized, you know, you could say, yeah, you believe this because your book says something like this, and this is what's accepted by the larger body or something. Like, you can actually make that case a lot better than you can with us as individual. Like, even everybody at the ACA might have a different idea of what atheism. I think we all actually probably have a pretty similar definition, but like, you know, we outside of that definition, we have different opinions about a lot of different things, and we may view things differently. And so, like, you know, unless you can directly quote myself about something I've said, or cite a work that I've cited on something, same thing with Matt. Yeah, it does seem kind of rude when you're like, oh, this is what you believe, because we pride ourselves on our independence, man. I mean, we like to think that we're quote unquote free thinkers, but I don't know. I mean, it's different when you grow up in a culture where you go to church and you're given what you're supposed to believe. Like, this is it. You can't deviate from this norm. Whereas we kind of approach it differently, and we say, well, we can use different methods to figure out, you know, what we believe and don't believe, and you know, to go from there.
Well, it's strange because I'd like to think I would never tell somebody, no, you believe this. I would say, if you're a Christian, you, under normative terms, you should believe X. Like, you should believe Jesus is the Son of God or divine.
And even then, though, it gets tricky.
It does.
It's not super simple.
And there's 1,000 denominations, and they disagree on every single point of doctrine you can imagine.
Yeah. And I, you know, and I know you do this too, but I always try to make sure when I'm talking to people, I am always letting them define their own terms, especially when we're talking about God and Christianity, because you ask 10 different Christians what they think Christianity is, you're going to get 11 different answers. So
at least. Yeah. I stood in front of 4 theists, all of them trying to offer different defenses for the Bible's view on slavery. It's strange because
if I had a nickel, Matt, you know, I could do laundry.
I got a nickel around here somewhere. I'll give it to you. This whole thing, when we're looking at, what do people believe? Well, it's one thing to talk about what the Bible says. It's one thing to talk about what Christianity says, but I would never pretend or act like I would have nothing to learn from a theist. That's just not true. I've been taught many, many things, both as a theist and as an atheist, by theists.
Absolutely.
One thing I've never been taught by a theist is that they know my mind better than I do.
Right.
That hasn't happened yet. And that's funny and strange for one very good reason. And here's the ending thought to take with you. If in fact they had the ability to communicate with a God who absolutely knows what is in my mind, they should be able to tell me what's in my mind, if God wants them to, more accurately than I could. But the fact that they keep trying to tell me what's in my mind and they're wrong clearly means that they're not getting this information from a God, whether or not a God exists. And so here's my thing for Christians and theists of all stripes. If you believe in a God that we should believe in, why is he sending you? And why isn't he equipping you with what you need? Why is your God afraid to come and talk to Dan and I? Why is your God afraid to interact on the show? Why is your God afraid to demonstrate the truth of their existence to everyone in reality? And why are they sending you with fallacies and tired old canards and complete misunderstandings about physics and nothing and the origin of the universe, and then what's in my head?
Yeah. And
if your God loved you, you're being punked by your God if he's real.
Yeah. I was going to add, if our hearts are truly hardened, because that's a response I hear sometimes. Oh, it doesn't even matter because, our hearts are hardened and we don't want to hear the truth. Then why even have a conversation with us? Why even talk to us about it? What's the point? What's the point of the good news? Is the good news not to convince people of the truth of Christianity? What is the whole point? Like the foundation just doesn't make any sense, right?
Every single one of you out there who think that God loves you and wants you to talk to us and that God can communicate to you, here's what you need to do. Pray for God to tell you exactly what you should say to us, and then say it. I can guarantee you that's never happened. Because if your God knew exactly what you should say to us, actually I have to retract that. Maybe your God told you not to say anything at all to us and to ignore us because we are the heathen damned for hell. In which case, fuck your God. On that note, thanks everybody. Thanks to the crew. Thanks to the people who put the crew up. Show them people who make all this wonderful stuff happen right there behind the scenes. We will be back again next week with more information, but you don't have to wait that long because you can tune in and watch Truth Wanted Live next Friday, and you can go back and watch this last weekend's episode and all the rest of them as well. Thank you so much, Dan, for being here with me today. I loved it. We'll get you back as soon as we can. Please stay safe. See you next week.
Bye, everybody.